If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome into the EscapePod. We're back. We're back in the pod. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And
It's been a while.
We skipped 1 week of recording, but it does feel like a while when you're used to doing it every week.
Yeah.
Well, I think we maybe did 2 in 1 week, so then it's like, oh, it's kind of nice to not have to do it.
We did 2 back to back. We had a marathon last time we recorded. Yeah.
They were really good ones, though.
I did feel like my head got pinched for 3 hours, but
my ears hurt a little afterwards. Yeah. It is true. It is true. Well, only 1 episode today, but you're going to want to listen because we have another special guest. The man who I still can't figure out why he doesn't like me, but it's fine. I'll get over it. Mr. Tim Doyle.
Also, record downloads.
That is
any
true.
Episode we've ever had was the True Crime Hits Too Close, episode number 10. So please don't let it go to your head, Tim Doyle.
Like the bullet did.
Oh,
wow.
I mean, the fact you can joke about
hit
that.
Hit the button. Wah, wah, wah. Wah. That was pretty good.
We're not going to talk about the shooting today, right? That's not why we're here.
That's not
we're
why we're
not here for that.
No stories about me getting shot.
But people can go back and listen, as she said, episode 10. But I think we're going to have a little bit more fun today. Although you said that you have some more serious stories. You should probably introduce him properly. I just jumped into the fact that I wonder, what his
Julie
beef is with
and
me.
I were looking at, we talk about some pretty serious stuff, and we wanted to try to lighten the mood. And so we were talking about things you just can't make up, like that you see in law enforcement. So we asked that of Laura Retzel on last time and got some really good material. And so we're like, well, I mean, this is our dinner table talk. So let's see what Officer Doyle brings to the show. And so I see he's got a bunch of notes in front of him. But before we jump into that, what are you escaping this week, Julie?
Well, I would love to escape parenting just for a few hours because tonight's all the parent stuff, like parent-teacher conferences, PTA meeting, taking kids to activities. It's all, I actually had to call in backup. My parents had to come drive my kids to stuff because I'm like, literally, I cannot be in 4 places at one time. Can you please come help? And so thankfully, they're in a position where they can do that once in a while. They couldn't do it daily by any means, but they can do it if I really need help. They are happy to do it. So they're coming to make sure kids get to the right places at the right times. But if I could escape something, it would be could I just have the kids and not all the extra stuff? The parent-teacher conferences come with it? What about you?
Well, without trying to turn this into a political podcast, what I'm trying to escape is I have heard probably 3 times in the last week and a half, One Heart doesn't get its story out there enough. We don't know what's going on at One Heart. I mean, we continue to hear these false narratives of One Heart's only 25% full.
Right.
And here's the deal, folks. When you've said something like that, and you've been corrected, and you continue to say something like that, you are doing it intentionally. You are trying to be an ass or whatever. You have an agenda. So it's just really frustrating. It's like, well, you need to tell. And I'm thinking, Julie and I were just talking about this off air earlier. We have amazing stories. We do share them constantly. People don't want to, they're not attracted. They're not going to go seek out, I just feel like I'm going to go on social media or any of our TV stations and go look for happy stories. But I tell you what, if someone shot somebody at one of our towers, or if we had an explosion or there was a rape or something horrific, we'd get all kinds of attention. So it's like the fact that nobody seems to know what's going on over here, I think is a testament to the fact that it's because it's all good.
Yeah.
So I'm just tired of people going, you don't tell your story. I'm like, the hell we don't. Okay, do you know how many tours we do? Do you know how many, all this stuff? And I'm just like, ugh.
Well, welcome to our world, too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That happens to police officers. Okay, before you go, Tim, I have a new one. I'm escaping. location has been turned off. I am getting a notification on the computer, and I've hit got it 4 times now, and it's gonna. I'll let you know when it pops up again. That's what I want to escape. I have to go into the settings.
What's
I don't
it
want to
for?
do that right now. Just like that your GPS is activated or not on your computer.
Okay.
I mean, I
didn't know
suppose.
GPS was on my computer.
Well, pretty much anything digital.
Great.
True? Would you agree?
That's fantastic.
It just did it again. Okay, it's fine. It's not influencing our.
I'm going to just watch for a twitch in Julie's
I'm gonna-
face this episode.
I'm not going to say got it because it doesn't understand that
Yeah.
button.
I want an alternative button.
I need to go. It says open settings. I will, but I'm not doing it right now. Tim, what are you escaping this week? He might want to escape the EscapePod after today.
He might.
Oh, what am I escaping?
My wife and all of her issues.
Yeah, let's go with that.
For those of you
She
listening,
read my
if you
mind.
picked up on this episode for your first time listening to the EscapePod, I am married to that man. So
It's a true story.
it is a
She
true
just
story.
just point at me.
And not for like a hot minute.
you.
It's been a while.
29 years.
Wow. Were you like 10 when you got married?
I'll take that.
Remember the time my child really did think you were like 30?
I know, you're sweet, sweet, sweet boy.
Well, you can have him some days. But he was really sweet that day. He was like, really? 'Cause I think it was your birthday or something. And he was like, how old is she? Like 30?
Wasn't that my 50th?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh,
Sweet. That was my
but I
little
will tell her
birthday-
you said
birthday
that.
blessing.
It's
Yes.
definitely not our work keeping us young.
No, I think this last 3 weeks has probably knocked a good decade off my life.
Well, maybe it was going to be a
Although
really bad
still
decade.
Botox free. I'm going to say I was in a dispute with a girlfriend about that yesterday. She's like, I know you do Botox. I have not ever done Botox. I swear to God.
Your face is way too expressive.
Yeah.
To have
Right?
done Botox. Yes.
Thank you for backing
can-
me on
I
that
can
one.
vouch for that. Okay. So I see the list. I want to know, how long did it take you to come up with the list?
I've had to, by the way, no Botox for me either.
Okay.
For the record.
You also
it's,
don't look your age. So you have that going for you.
Well, and I still don't know why you think I don't like you.
I don't either, but sometimes
Hey, let's talk it out. Should I go grab Rochelle?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think she's here
let's
today.
get this
I
handled
give
today.
everyone a hard time, so don't take that as that I don't like you,
Okay.
because I do that to everyone. Like, my kids wouldn't think I like them if that was the case. So, no, the list, it's not as easy as you think.
Okay.
Like, we see more crazy things in a week than most people see in their life. But then when you sit down and you're like trying to think of what all those things were, it's not as easy as
Because
you
it's
would
just
think.
normal. It doesn't
Right, it's-
stand out anymore, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, like when we sit down together, we start talking about stuff, then the stories just kind of come. But like trying to pull them out of thin air is not as easy as it sounds.
You do kind of need the average citizen to hear the story to determine, is it worth being considered unusual? Because I remember way back in the day, and I do not remember which police officer it was who said this, but I was looking through remember how they used to, I don't know if they still do this, but they would set out the police, like the log from the night before, the log of calls. And so you could go check the police log outside one of the offices. And reporters, it's like if you didn't have somewhere you had to be, go check the police log, just see if there's anything interesting in there. And I remember one of the officers saying at the one point, he said, well, we've thought about putting out like a daily, like, here's what's happened sort of thing. And I do think they did end up doing something like that. But he said the problem is what we think is interesting and what most people think are interesting are two different things. Like, I could tell you something that to me is just kind of, it's not an atypical call, but you, because you aren't in this world, you think it's interesting. And I completely see why somebody would say that.
There's probably some things that we think that are funny that the average person
sure,
would not
for
think is
sure.
funny because of, humor and laughing is how we
Cope.
process and cope and get through things. I did have one the other day that I'm pretty sure anyone would have found funny.
Okay.
And it's a real simple, short story. How I really have to get the the visual down because it's a really visual thing. So I'm out in a police car. There was a subject passed out in the middle of the park, just laying on the ground, face up. And actually, it was one of the fire department mobile medics who had found him initially, called for us. So I go. This guy was really, really drunk.
Okay.
So we had to like help him to the car. So we're helping him to the car, and it was I think I was in a pickup truck, and so it's a step to get up to the back seat. So we help him up, and I'm just taking him to detox, which he was perfectly okay with. So he's got his butt on the seat, and his legs are kind of sticking out, and he's trying to get himself
Maneuver.
the rest of the way into the truck. And he reaches down and grabs his own belt loop and lifts up on the belt loop to try to lift himself into the vehicle.
Like a parent would do with a toddler.
You know, like I've heard of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but apparently pulling yourself into the police car by a belt loop is also a thing.
Did it work?
No. It did not work. We had to give him some other suggestions on maybe how to do that. But me and the mobile medic just kind of looked at each other, and sometimes you just got to laugh. And we kind of turned around and had our little chuckle and took him to detox. But yeah, it did not work.
Hey, at least he went without a fight.
No,
that probably doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, more than you think.
Oh, really? See, again, like what you think is normal and what I think is normal are two different things.
No, I mean that's kind of a good point. So we literally have hundreds of calls a day. And dozens and dozens of time in a day where we pick someone up, take them to detox, the same thing that we're taking people to jail. The number of times where we actually physically get into an altercation with somebody, it's very rare.
Yeah.
So, but you only hear about when it goes bad.
Yeah.
So when it goes from someone gets a video of us taking someone to the ground or all the way up to us being in a shooting, like that's all you hear about. The 99 point whatever % of the time where we do de-escalate. We do just get someone peacefully to wherever we need to take them. Those are the ones you don't hear about. So people they know what they see and they only see the bad.
I have a beautiful analogy. Do you want to hear what I heard yesterday?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you already know this.
Okay.
You don't? I'll
kidding.
just talk to Julie then.
kidding.
I'm just going to face this way. Butthead. Anyway,
It's like when your parents fight at home.
we were getting smack from someone in the community because we have a tour room.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we bring people through the campus that are interested in what we do, want to learn about our programming. Guests come and take a look at the facilities as a part of their decision process on whether they want to engage in programming. And it's that same kind of a thing. There's one room empty when there's all these people that don't have shelter or place to be. And it's like, well, you can just forget about the, 150 plus people that we are sheltering and serving and transforming. Like, it's just ridiculous. So it's the same kind of concept.
Yeah. And that one room also, which I tell people, I can show you this now because it is empty right now, but
We
it
may
won't
not always have
be
it, yeah.
empty. And I've been proactive in like taking photos so we can still show people. But yeah, I've said that multiple times, but they do key in on kind of what, and also like ideas that reinforce themselves, right? Like, oh, now I have some evidence of what I thought already. And it's like, well, that's one tiny piece of what you thought and what you thought was wrong to begin with.
Yeah. And when you have like 90 units,
Yeah.
we're doing a lot over here.
Yeah.
So
Tell me more.
Well, so speaking of things that people don't understand, so I'm going to do a little PSA on when you walk by a cop, if you think that raising your hands and saying, I didn't do it is funny,
It's not.
it's not. Like, do you have any idea how many times I've heard that? Or the other one is they point to their friend and they're like, hey, I did it.
I love
And,
it. Next time I'm totally going to do that.
So my first year as a cop, I could laugh it off. But after literally the 100th time,
It's
don't-
not funny.
I don't think Charity has a good poker face. I also do not have a good poker face. And I try not to just I have probably the scowl on my face. Like, did you just really do that? It's not funny. So don't do it. It's like the least original thing you can say to a cop.
You know, you're just egging everybody on right now, right?
Maybe. Well, I mean, if they want to be an idiot, then go ahead and do it. But if you're not funny, it's not funny.
Yeah.
Like, it's just as original than when someone we're arresting calls us a pig. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Or like a donut.
yeah, it's almost like, really? That's
Yeah.
the best you can do?
Right.
So
It's true.
just-
Like a little more
It
creative.
doesn't cut deep, you mean? It's
a
just
little more
annoying.
creativity in
gotta do
your
better than-
insults.
Right, you got to do better than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she can judge some of these stories, too, because she's been with me on...
Oh, I don't know what's on his list.
She used to do ride-alongs with me quite a bit, and she's what we like to call a shit magnet. Like, every time she was riding with me, all hell would break loose. So there's a couple of stories, and one of them is funny, one of them really maybe not so funny, but actually one of them wasn't even a ride-along. This was a date that we were on.
Oh, okay.
So what had I told you before this, like about
You
what
had
we
told
see a lot
me
of?
that you see a lot of nudity, particularly butt cracks. And I thought, oh, you can't see
I believe
many
that.
butt cracks. And it was within days of him telling me this that we had what he's going to talk about next.
And you can jump in here too. So it was like a date night. I think we went to a play. We went to a bar
I don't
downtown.
know, I drank a lot of chocolate martinis, so I don't even remember the play.
So I'm driving, and we stopped at Perkins on A Street, and so it was late, and we're having kind of a late dinner, probably because she had been drinking. So what do you want to do when you drink? You go to Perkins.
Yeah.
So
Which we probably hadn't done since college, but it was like,
right. So we leave Perkins. We're driving south on A Street to go home, and I'm not one of those people that like always has to be on duty and like I'm looking for something to like jump into and I'm off duty. Like I'm way past that. But we drive by a parking lot and there is a car upside down on its roof.
Oh.
And there's like people, and this is maybe
it was the Arby's parking lot.
yeah,
and
well, this is like past midnight
Yeah,
probably.
yep.
So let's say 1 a.m. So there's a car on its roof and there's like people sitting around the parking lot and there's no like this must have just happened because there's no police or fire there yet.
They were probably debating whether to call anybody because they clearly hadn't happened within like 60 seconds. Like they were all these people had gotten out of the car and there was quite a group.
Well,
Everyone was out of the vehicle.
yeah. So there was passerbys that were there and one of them I think had already called. So I'm like, all right, I better at least pull in here and stop and make sure everyone's okay. So we pull
case
in.
Someone's going to take off, right?
Everyone's out of the car, and I look at a guy who I think was on his phone. I'm like, who was the driver? Because it's just one car, and he points down to the curb, and there's this guy sitting on the curb, and I look over at him, and obviously he has no idea I'm a cop, but I'm just watching his body language, and he's like looking around. I'm like, oh, he's gonna run.
Gonna bolt.
And, you know, you can assume he's drunk. He doesn't want to get a DUI, so he's going to run. So he does. He gets up and he starts running down one of the side streets. So I go after him. So I'm kind of running after him. I have a few foot chase stories, actually. And I think he just fell on his own because he's that drunk. So
Well,
he-
it was way more exciting from my perspective because he gets out of the car. He leaves me on the phone with dispatch.
Uh-huh.
And then I went, oh my God, my husband's running down the street. And so I get over there and the guy's face down on the street and it's kind of on a hill.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband's sitting on him. And I look over and he just points down to the guy's butt crack that was exposed. And I'm like, you totally called it.
I think we had just had that conversation. So yeah,
Like,
I'm
see?
chasing after him, and when people are really drunk, they don't run very well, and they tend
Uh-huh.
to fall down a lot. So he falls down in the middle of the street, and I just kind of went up and just kind of put some weight on his back, and then just kind of sat there and waited.
Yeah.
And then I had to point it out, like, yeah, see, I'm not
told you.
exaggerating. And you know the stuff that we see, the people who are naked, it's not it's not the person that you would point and go, I want to see that person naked.
Right.
It's never that person.
I'm married to a firefighter and EMT, and yeah, he's like, I've seen all the things, and it's not a turn on. We'll just leave it at that.
No, and
yeah.
So we'll leave it. Yeah, we'll leave it there. The other.
Well, hopefully the universe will throw you guys a bone at one point in time. It'll be like a naked
just
supermodel or something.
Beautiful
Did you just say
woman.
throw us a bone?
Damn you! You're such a brat.
And on that note, what's next on your list?
Well,
Michael Scott.
There's another kind of crazy ride along story that we had. The minivan in the bank.
Oh, that
lot.
was bananas. Yes.
So, since I'll be doing most of the talking, why don't you take this one and I'll just kind of jump
Can you tell
in.
that story? Okay. So it was daytime. It was a daytime ride along, not nighttime. And I don't know the technical terms of the call, but the call that came over was there's like a subject throwing stuff out of a minivan. So like minivan is cruising down Elkvale and stuff is coming out of the car. And so they had just been, we learned later, shopping at the grocery store off of Elkvale. It was under different ownership at that time. They'd left, and not the driver, but the passenger had a mental break and went berserk.
Ooh.
And so the driver didn't know. She was getting beat up by the girl, she was losing it, right? And so she somehow turns around and gets back. She didn't make it back to the grocery store, but she made it to the parking lot of the bank next door to it.
Okay.
And so were we the first ones there?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of us
Okay.
that got there pretty much at the same time.
And Tim when he uses his cop voice at me, it scares me, but he goes, stay behind the car. I'm like, okay. So, because stuff was going, the girl was pouring bleach and and she had a broom or a mop or something. Like there was a big handle. So now by this point, the minivan door is open. I'll let you talk about the tasing piece. So he's just kind of watching. He's not really saying much, but she's got the mop or broom handle and she's like trying to stab at the police officers out of the door. And Tim just kind of watches it like 1, 2, 3, and he grabs it and pulls her out. She's holding on to it and she didn't expect it. So, but I'll let you tell the...
Well, so there was 2 of us there, myself and Scott. And Scott started with me. So yeah, the door is open. She's inside. It's not really safe for us to go inside the van and grab her.
Yeah.
Plus she's going to poke us with the stick. And
you probably don't know what else she might have access to.
yeah, you don't. She could have something else. She could be trying to light the van on fire, like you just don't know. So I'm standing there, and Scott's next to me, and he's got his taser out, and I'm thinking, okay, if we tase her, she's still in the van. How are we going to get her out of the van? Because it's going to be a cramped space, and there's a good time for a taser, and there's a time where it's maybe not going to be the best tool. So no, I just decided, all right, and I think I yelled at Scott like, "Don't tase me," because I was gonna step in front of him, and it has happened to where we're in a fight, and
Whoops.
one officer is trying to tase another, and maybe the suspect doesn't get it, the cop gets it, and getting tased is not a fun experience. So
I believe it.
It's not something that I want to repeat from my training. So I just waited for the stick to get into
Range.
to reaching distance and grabbed it and pulled her out, and we got her probably handcuffed and in a car, and I don't even remember what we did with her. I
We
think
took her to the emergency department.
it was it was
she
it was
was
a mental
freaking
hold.
out. Yeah.
We did a mental hold and didn't.
She wouldn't cooperate with medical staff, and I remember the nurse saying, if you don't calm down, I'm going to give you a shot in the butt. And then she's just screaming, don't shoot me in the butt! Don't shoot me in the butt! And then pretty soon she's just silent. I'm like, that nurse got her anyway.
Was everybody else in the car? Did they end up being okay?
Yeah, and everyone was fine.
The driver was just like,
like,
there was stuff scattered all over the
it
parking
was
lot.
a mess.
Yeah, she was pouring bleach around inside the
And there
vehicle.
were the driver had kiddos in the
Yeah.
car too. Yeah.
There's
it's
groceries
both-
in there, like.
Both sad and obviously the "don't tase me" is funny, but yeah, at least you know.
I mean, I hope she got the help she needed.
Right.
But,
It
I mean,
could have
just
been
mental
even
break.
worse.
She could have made the driver wreck. There could have been all kinds of other things.
Well, you think about like a can of peas chucked out a window if you were happen to be hit
or
by it, or
didn't
your
we just
car
have
hit
someone
by it.
get? He wasn't. This was South Dakota. Didn't I see this week, or did I have a fever dream?
I'm not sure what you're talking
A
about.
guy threw a can of beans at a woman's head. He just got sentenced. I think it killed her.
Oh, I don't know.
You
I
don't?
didn't
Okay.
see that.
I'll look that one up.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving right along. What else is on your list there, sir?
Can you think of any other fun ride-along stories? That's definitely the one that sticks out in my mind.
Oh, well, one of the fun ones for my friend Kirsten was when she saw, like, we were outside of, I don't remember the name of it now, after closing, bar close.
Bar close.
Yeah. And she comes up to me. So Tim's dealing with bar close people. There's several officers out there. And she goes, I think I just saw someone put a baggie of white stuff in his pocket. And I'm like, seriously? She's like, yeah. And so I'm like, okay. So I kind of mentioned it to Tim. I think it was Tim. I don't know if I said it to you or another officer, but they go up to the guy like, hey, can we check your pockets? He said, yep, because he was hammered. And sure enough, they found cocaine.
Oh.
And she's like, ah, we found a drug bust.
That's
That
hilarious.
was fun.
She was on a drug bust.
Yeah.
So
Like a little package.
there's another tasing story. This one's kind of wild. So this was like Memorial Park. So there was an assault, and our suspect didn't want to run, but didn't want to get caught. So he was standing in the middle of the creek. And I think this might have involved a knife or something like that. But I think by the time he's standing in the middle of the creek,
Was he trying to hurt himself, I think?
No, I think he assaulted somebody else.
Oh, okay.
So he's in the middle of the creek, and it was flowing pretty good at that point.
Oh.
So we're on either side of the creek because going in the water to get someone is
Not ideal.
not ideal. We have a dog, but sending the dog in the water, it's really not something they train with a lot. So and I think I was probably a sergeant at this point. So we're like, we have him surrounded, and he absolutely is going to refuse to come out. So we're trying to figure out, how do we get this guy out of the water?
He's going to get numb enough eventually, right?
Now this was summer.
Oh, okay.
So he might have been numb to begin with. So he's kind of working his way down with the flow to the east. So I think it's right on the other side of like the 5th Street Bridge. I knew where he was going, so I went across the road and right down by the creek, and there's a place where there's a little island. And had he stayed in the middle, he'd have been plenty of far away from us. He decided to take the little channel between the edge of the creek where I am and the little island there, and it's only maybe 10 feet wide. So now he's in distance of me, and I can tell where he's going. I'm like, am I jumping in on this guy? Like, so I took off. I think I took off maybe my vest or my duty belt, and here he comes right by me. So I jumped in the water on top of him.
Oh, jeez.
And so I've got a hold of him, and now we got to get him out of the water onto the bank. Now here comes Darren, who also started with me. He was on the other side, so he's running across the creek now when he's got his taser out, and I'm like, oh God,
Danger.
So yeah, he ended up.
No.
He ends up tasing the guy while I'm in the water with him, holding on to him, and it worked perfectly. Like, locked him up. By this time there was somebody else up on the bank, so I was on one side, they were on the other side. We got him like up onto the bank while he was still riding the lightning, and got him handcuffed. But it's like the pucker factor on standing there in the water holding on to somebody and seeing Darren running at me with the taser out. I'm like,
This might not end well.
but you know what? In the moment, you're like, yeah, let's do this. It's usually after the fact when we're thinking back on these calls, we're like, we just did that. But I mean,
You're just responding.
And there is, you don't train on, we don't do scenarios on how do you get a guy out of the middle of the creek.
Yeah.
So when the opportunity comes up, I'm like, if I don't jump on this guy and get him right now, we're going to have to follow him all the way down. Like, who knows where we're going to get him. So
Box elder.
sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah.
It's never
I was
perfect.
waiting for you to get like one of the big fishing nets and just wait and let him like wear out and you just scoop him right up. Like the really big ones that they use on like.
And cartoons.
Yeah, why not?
Well, so this could kind of lead into my next story, which also kind of involves water. So this is a two-parter. This is we'll call this Good and Bad with Lisa. So Lisa is one of our homeless population, and so there was the first story is where she helped.
Oh.
So we had just had it was summer, a really bad storm came through. So there was like really bad rain and hail
Okay.
so it was, when that happens, we try to get all of our police cars in our Sally port so that we don't get a bunch of hail damage and have to spend a bunch of money fixing our cars. So we're in the Sally port kind of waiting it out. So the storm passes and then the calls start coming in, and the first call was a guy passed out. I think it was like the 600 block of Main Street. So
during the hailstorm,
he literally passed out and slept through this whole hailstorm.
Wow. Out exposed?
Yeah. He was just out on the sidewalk. So
the last hailstorm we had that affected us literally was baseball-sized hail. Like I have the pictures in my hand to prove it. And part of the reason my car was damaged was because once I realized what I was hearing hitting the roof, because it was really weird and it came from a different direction. So I didn't realize it. Like at first, I was like, what is that sound? It took me a minute to like figure it out. Once I saw how big it was, I'm like, I'm not going out to move my car. It could kill me.
Yeah.
Like, so just to put in perspective for people who don't live in hail areas, like when it's big hail, it's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, we don't have hurricanes. We have
We
baseball
do
size
have
hail.
hail. Yeah.
now I think this was probably the typical, pea,
Okay.
whatever size hail.
Okay.
But
So
you
not
never-
so,
you
so
never
not
know.
so terrible.
Right.
Okay.
You never know until, but so I hop in my car and it's only a couple blocks. So I get down there and I'm parked on the street and he is out cold, still soaking wet.
But he was alive.
He was alive and he was not one of our regulars. And this was a big dude. He's like 6'6" and probably 250 pounds.
Okay.
And he was being mostly cooperative, but I get him up and I get him over to the back of my car, but he just doesn't want to sit down. And how do you make a guy who's 6'6" sit into a
down.
car when he really doesn't want to? And, like I can call for help, which I probably did, but now there's like with two people trying to do the same thing, it doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's no nice way to make somebody sit in your car.
Mm-hmm.
So here comes Lisa walking down the other side of the street, and she just walks right over, and she knew this guy. She talked him into the back seat in probably 5-10 seconds.
Oh.
Nice.
So yeah, I was like, oh, thank you, Lisa. You saved me from I don't know what. This might have been another one of those other kind of stories I was
Right.
sharing on this podcast, but yeah, she just came over and talked him into the car, and
So she saw what you were doing and then just came to be helpful.
she saw that he was not cooperating, and she just came over and talked to him and got it to work out. So the second part of the
Fascinating.
story, same Lisa. I'm guessing first story was sober Lisa.
Okay.
Second story was not sober Lisa. So we get a call of Memorial Park by the pond of a female like yelling and screaming and yelling obscenities. And so by the time we get there, it's Lisa, and she is in the middle of the pond, like literally the middle.
Ooh.
And it's the middle of the day, and
How deep is that pond?
it's not very deep.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, she was swimming. So I think when it's full in the middle, you can't touch. But
Okay.
So, but it was a nice day. So there's people all around the
Oh, geez.
all around the pond fishing, and there's parents with their kids there.
Yep.
And she is not having any of it. She's mad at them. So we get there, and now she's mad at us. So we're trying to convince her to work her way out of the pond, and like there's all kinds of colorful language coming at us, like she's not getting out. And we're like, okay, we can't just leave her because
Yeah. Well, she's
going to get tired eventually of swimming, and
Yeah.
so we're like, who has a friggin' boat? Like, does it hurt? So my first thought was, all right, let's go on the other side of the trees. So maybe if she sees us leave, she'll come out herself.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work. So somebody I was with, I'm like, I don't know, call the fire department, see if they have a boat. Like I know we have water rescue. Like how long? I don't know how long it'll take them to get here, but they got there pretty quick. But yeah, we tried everything to get her out. She wasn't having it. So by the time fire department got there with the boat, I think they were just getting ready to put the boat in the water, and she
walked out.
She comes strolling out of the water.
Oh, you're like, dang, we wanted to use the boat.
I wasn't gonna be on the boat.
Oh, okay. That would have been
Well,
kind of fun, though.
4-foot pond.
Actually, I probably would have.
Yeah.
I probably would have requested.
Knowing you, yeah.
So yeah, so she's soaking wet, and I think I was probably a sergeant at this point too. So the good thing about that is I don't have to transport her.
Okay.
I can call for an officer to come transport her and her soaked everything to detox, or where we probably just took her to detox. So
Yeah.
that was the two sides of Lisa. But I will say that I can forgive her for the second one because of how much she helped me on the first one.
There you go.
That was a big dude.
That's funny. The voice of reason sometimes does not come from the voice you think it will.
No.
That's awesome. Well, there you go.
I do have a couple of parent stories too. You know, I spent a lot of time in the school.
Oh. Okay, well this goes right along with what I'm escaping from this week, so you
Right.
go for it.
So we can switch over to that. So the first one is a teenager called dispatch to report that his mom assaulted him. Remember, she knows this one. So I get the call. It's just me. I'm going by myself. So not a lot in the call. Just say, hey, my mom assaulted me. She slapped me, like whatever the call said. So I go, I knock on the door. Mom answers. I can tell mom is like really, really scared that she's going to jail.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, just tell me what happened. So she lets me in the house. It's just me and her. We're having a conversation in the living room. And she's like, well, I don't remember. They were having some kind of an argument. Like she wanted him to do something, the teenager, and he didn't want to do it. And so she's trying to convince this teenager to do something he doesn't want to do. It escalates. And he called her the C word.
Ooh.
I'm assuming you don't want me to say the C word.
Please don't.
Okay. He calls mom the C word, and she slapped him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's it? She's like, you didn't like take a baseball bat and beat him over the head? Like, nope, just slapped him once. I'm like, all right, bring him down. And I think she can probably tell at this point by my demeanor, she's feeling a little better about the situation. She's like, all right, this guy's not taking me to jail. So the teenager comes down. I'm like, why am I here? And he tries to like downplay his role in while she hit me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, what led up to that?
Yep.
And he does it. I could tell he doesn't want to tell me. He doesn't want to tell me what he said. So it took a while, but he finally got to he's like, well, yeah, I got upset and I called her the C word. And then she slapped me. I'm like, okay, anything else happen? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, I think in my head, this is what I did. Did I actually say this? I don't remember. Maybe I did. But what I said in my head was, dude, if you would have done that in our household, you would have been picking your ass up off the floor. So is there any other reason I'm here? No. Mom, good job. Need anything from me? Bye. But at some point, like this mom was terrified she was going to jail.
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry, that teenager earned that slap. Probably earned more than that. But at some point, the kids convinced the parents that they're now running the show. Like, you can't touch me. You can't do anything to me.
Child abuse, yeah.
And if they only saw what it took to get a kid taken away from their parents wouldn't be so afraid. But that's kind of a different topic.
But I mean, things change, right? Eras. Like, I think about like the abuse or discipline or whatever you want to call it I endured by my father nowadays would be completely unacceptable. I mean, beating a small child with a belt.
Well, what you went through was not normal.
Still, though, back then, he probably wouldn't have been. You think so?
What he did was beyond just discipline. Like, there's discipline and but I even think back then that would have been a problem.
Well, I can say my kids have never called me the C word. And I'm confident they've never behind my back. But that word is reserved for my mother.
I don't know your kids that well, but I am confident they're
we're super
not
close.
using that word.
No, we have a great family.
Yeah.
Dynamic.
You're fine.
I don't know. It does occasionally get said with the British accent because they do say that a lot.
Yeah, that's just like saying ass all the time or whatever. It's so
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Australians too.
Uncomfortable.
Australians.
Because I'm American.
They have like a requirement to say it like 10 times a day or something. So it's just different. But, here it's a
culture.
really terrible insult, which, by the way, my husband did when we were dating, call my mother one to her face.
Ooh.
But she earned it. God, that woman earned it.
Did we didn't get into that story ever?
We may have, but carry on with your list. I don't want to talk about her. I'm happy right now.
So yeah,
That's for another day.
So we've established you can say the C word as long as you say it with an Australian accent, then you're okay.
Do you have an Australian accent?
I'd have to practice it, so I'd have
Okay.
to step out. I won't do it.
Julie can always edit
I'm like,
it out.
please don't.
So the parent thing. So here's kind of when I knew for sure that our society was in trouble. So when I worked as a liaison in the schools, like working with the kids, loved it. Like even the kids who were in trouble, like there's very few kids who I look back and are like, I don't ever want to see that kid again in my life. Like loved the kid part of working in the school. The part that I got to not like was dealing with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And the best illustration I have of that, actually I have two stories that kind of show both sides of this. The first one was what I was just talking about. So there was an assistant principal. He was standing outside the east side of the building. This was at the end of the day, and these two kids decided to get into a fight, like right in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And this assistant principal was a huge guy. Like you couldn't miss him. So I don't know what these kids were thinking. So he ends up grabbing one of the kids and like taking them down to his office. So he calls us in there because there was a fight, or I think it was just me actually. So they call the parent. So the dad has to leave work to come to school because his son was in a fight. So dad is upset with the kid because he had called the kid in sick. So the kid tells dad, I'm sick.
Oh.
So the dad believes his son,
Uh-huh.
calls his son in sick, goes to work, and now finds out that his son was well enough to come back to school at the end of the day and start a fight.
Oh, he was the instigator.
Right. So dad is furious with his son. And I was still pretty new, so we hadn't gotten to the point yet where like when a kid screwed up, we had to call the parent. Like by the end of my time there, you expected the parent to be upset with you, not their kid. That's when I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So the dad comes in and dad is upset with the kid, obviously for good reason. And so the kid and the dad are talking back and forth, and the dad's like, you told me you were sick, and now you're getting into a fight after school? And the kid, sitting there in a chair, looks over at his dad and says, lower your voice.
Oh.
Do you have a button for that?
I don't know.
Try the
Is there
purple
like
one.
a
Try the
slap
purple one.
sound?
The purple one? That's a bleep. That won't work.
Okay. No.
No. I don't know. There isn't.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah, red alert, red alert.
red alert.
Good Lord, lower your voice.
Looks at his dad and says, lower your voice. And not, you know, it's not often that we see or hear something that really just kind of stops us in our tracks. And that totally did. And the principal was the same way. We were both just like,
Did that just
kind of looked at
happen?
each other like, did we just hear that?
Right.
And that was kind of the end of it. We finished.
So who's the parent?
Exactly. Well, what did the dad say?
I don't even remember. I was so floored that the kid even said it.
It's like you don't remember what happened next.
I think the dad just kind of shook his head. I get the impression thinking back that this was a single dad trying to raise his son, and he's working, he's doing the right thing, and his son is not doing the right thing. But that was a moment where I'm like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
Like, holy hell! This wasn't like a big kid, and he's bigger than his dad.
Yeah.
Like this was a little, like the little Chihuahua kid, like thinks he's bigger and tougher than he is. But
Oh, I mean, sometimes you hear like little kids, and there is something to be said for they're finding their independence. They're testing you. You go through phases where all of that is to some extent to be expected. But I'm like, doesn't mean you can't correct it, just because it's something that is part of a phase of childhood doesn't mean you just say it's okay. And not too long ago, I can't remember what one of my kids, because I do have a teenager now, and he said something just with an attitude, and I just looked at him and I was like, you don't get to talk to me that way. I don't know who you think you are, but that's not going to go over well here. So you can change your tone right now or else. And then he like real quick was like, okay, I'm sorry, But I'm like, yeah, kids are kids and teenagers are teenagers. And sometimes they say and do things that are stupid. But there's also like, do you just let them? Nope. Like,
Oh, weird. You're talking about that. I'm having like a strange recovered memory. This has been happening a lot lately. It's probably the damn podcast. Anyway, I was like 4.5, no more than 5. So little. And we were living in Utah, and it's late morning, like 10, 11 o'clock. Don't ask me how I remember this. I could be misremembering, but the part I'm going to get to, I clearly remember. And my dad was sleeping. And he had a friend come over to get high. And so I went to go wake my dad up, and he was probably already like blitzed, like he wouldn't wake up. And so I stood at the side of his bed and yelled, "Fire! Fire!" He beat the shit out of me. Oh. I'm a little tiny kid, like trying to wake my dad up, and that was worth a beating. So, yeah. Never did it again.
I'm sure not. Oh, shoot.
well,
His friend was there to see him. I'm just trying to but it didn't work out for me.
I think there's been times where our kids maybe challenged us a little bit more than they should, but that's when they don't think that they're disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
This kid was 100% like
disrespecting,
100% in the wrong. There's no room for I think Dad's overreacting here. Like this was one of those cases where you just shut up and you take whatever Dad gives you, and he earned it.
Oh.
So the other side of this is, so we had a kid, and this was a high achieving kid, athlete, multiple sport athlete, involved in some other things. Like, this was not the kid that we would expected to get in trouble. He could have an attitude, but overall, good kid, good parents. Well, he showed up to a school dance with the wrong crowd, and they smelled like weed, and all of them, they'd all been drinking. And so we dealt with the other kids, and he was sitting in the office area, and it was Mom that got the phone call to come get him, to take him home from the dance. And she walked in, and there was I think there was maybe both the other liaison and myself, and then one of the assistant principals. And she did not say a word. She walked up to him and slapped the shit out of him.
Ooh.
And it was a solid connection. Whack.
Oh, shoot.
And the kid did not move, did not say a word.
Huh.
And we just kind of looked at each other and said, we're going to go in the other room and give you a minute. And he earned that one too, because this kid had a lot to lose by doing something stupid like this. So that's the other side of this.
So were those kids in any legal trouble, or you just sent them home from the dance? Or maybe you don't remember, because that was you haven't been in the schools for a few years.
That was probably my first year there too. I mean, I'm sure there was
like a juvenile something.
This wasn't somewhere we were going to take him to JSC by any means, but
yeah.
So yeah, that was the other extreme of the parenting.
I never got any of those calls from school like your kid just effed up.
No.
My parents did, but we didn't, fortunately.
I haven't either. There are times when I'm like, what are you doing in school? Because when I ask what you've learned, you tell me, yes.
I don't know.
You sound just like a 13-year-old I live with.
I raised 2 of them.
Or I'll be like, what was the best part of your day? It was pretty standard. That's the other, like...
Lunch, gym class.
Yeah, even sometimes. Sometimes I have to ask, like, was lunch good? Yeah, it was okay. Or pretty okay. That's the other thing.
Okay.
It was like anything, class, school, lunch. How was it? Pretty okay. Just like, here we go. It has begun. What else you got?
So, speaking of like not listening or following directions, this is
looking at me.
No, this is not a funny story, but we talked about this before we started about like when all the crisis and all the violence that police deal with every day, and you only hear when things go bad. Like if we have to use force on somebody and someone happens to be taking video of it, or we have to shoot somebody, which thankfully doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. Like those are the only ones you hear about. So this was a story. I was a sergeant at the time, and there was a guy up on the north side of town. He was threatening people with a knife. I think we'd gotten like 2 or 3 calls on this guy. Okay. And I was just about to be done for the day. So I'm actually pulling into the Sally Port to be done. And this call comes out. So they're like, there's a bunch of people up looking for this guy because he could have been in like a 5-block radius.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, all right. So I turn back around and I go back out. And just as the time I'm getting up into that area, another sergeant, like one of our senior guys, is like, I've got this guy, and he's in the middle of the street. Thankfully, it was a side street. There wasn't really any traffic, and it was kind of a dead end. And at the end of a dead end, it went up a hill. So I get there, and I pull up, and so the other sergeant is off to my right. So I pull up in my car, and I get out. And I'm not really watching him. I'm watching the guy, because the guy is standing in the middle of the road with a big butcher knife.
Ooh.
And he's in an obvious mental crisis.
Okay.
So this is a senior sergeant. He's just talking to this guy like we're talking right now. Like, hey, come on, let's talk about this. Just put the knife down, whatever. So he's having that conversation. I'm just cover, and we're not gonna.
Is your gun drawn?
Not yet.
Okay.
His is, but so. So, and we're senior guys, so we're not going to put ourselves in a bad situation. So we had plenty of distance between us and him, because most people don't realize like how quickly, even if someone is, let's say, 15 yards away from you, like with a knife or a bat or something, like how quickly they're on top of you. Like if they come at you, by the time you can react, like you're getting stabbed. So we got plenty of distance. Like we're not too concerned at this point. So he's talking to him. So the guy's focus is on him. So I'm trying to like slow motion, real sneaky, like get my taser out of my belt, and so that the guy doesn't see me do it. So, and I've got it about halfway out of the holster, and then the guy looks over at me. I'm like, shit. So
I've
I'm
been
like,
made.
now I'm like frozen, like,
It's a stare down. Who's going to blink
and
first?
now he's like, yeah, fucking tase me, tase me. So I take it all the way out, and I just kind of put it behind my back. So the other sergeant starts talking to him again, and so he's got his gun on him. I have my taser out. So and then the guy like he starts running towards us. Like he takes 2 or 3 steps and lunges at us. That right there was enough for us to shoot this guy.
Yeah.
We didn't because we had put ourselves in a situation to where we had time to react and we didn't have to. So then the guy starts running up the hill. So I'm the younger guy, so it's not the other sergeant who's going to run up the hill after the guy. So now that the taser's away, now I have my gun out. So I'm following up the hill, and we have a bunch of officers above him on the hill. And so I'm keeping a good enough distance, and he got part way up the hill. He would turn around, so I would stop.
Yeek. Someone
then-
come in after you with a knife from uphill of you. That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
He just, whatever.
So then he gets up to the road above, and he starts going down the street. So I get up. So now I'm coming up to the top of the road, and I'm like waving my arms, like, "Hey, it's me! Don't shoot me!" Because I know there's a bunch of officers
Oh,
up
yeah.
there. So I get up to the top of the street. Now there's another younger officer to my right. So now both of us have our guns out, and now we're in the middle of a different street. He still has the knife out, but now I yelled to someone behind me to get the less lethal shotgun. It's a beanbag shotgun.
Okay. Yeah.
So as we're standing there in the middle, now we're in another standoff in the middle of the street. He still has a knife. He lunged at us again. That's the second time we could have shot
Was he
this guy.
trying to, like, suicide by cop? Or,
I think
or was he just in, like, a manic?
I think he was just
Okay.
like usually if they're doing that, they're going to keep going at you.
Okay.
But so he lunged again,
So he was testing you.
maybe.
Okay.
So
God.
we didn't shoot him, obviously. So then
Did you actually feel threatened at times, or?
I didn't.
Okay.
I mean, had I felt threatened, I would have shot him. But again, there's situations there where
Well, like you said, you felt like you were far enough, like you had pretty good distance.
Right. Like in the middle of a street with that much distance is one thing. Like
Yeah.
if you're in a house with somebody in a small room, like you don't.
different,
There's
yeah.
there's no, like if they come at you, that's it.
Yeah.
We had some. So he took off running again, jumped over a fence, was in someone's backyard, and then the
The
beanbag.
movie.
The fact he didn't hurt himself running with a knife.
That whole running with scissors is just a myth. You can perfectly safe to run with a big butcher
But he's
knife.
also like in a manic state and running up hills and being chased. And anyway, I feel like it could have ended badly whether cops were there or not.
Right. So he ended up taking several rounds with the beanbag shotgun,
Ooh.
and that's when he finally dropped the knife.
Okay.
So, yeah, that guy
Was
twice.
it possible he was in that state of excited delirium, or no?
I don't think this was a
drug-induced?
drug-induced
Okay.
thing. Mostly because they're usually naked.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So So there's this thing called excited delirium where, like, if they're on a stimulant like meth and they're overdosing, like their body temperature is like way above what a bad fever would be.
Okay.
So because they're in that state, they'll strip their clothes off, and it can be middle of winter. So if
Yeah.
we get a call of somebody who's naked outside in the winter, that's usually like they're usually overdosing on meth.
Yeah.
And they'll also they'll pour any liquid they can find on themselves.
Ooh.
Like they'll open the fridge and take ketchup or mustard or whatever,
Oh,
because
wow.
it's they feel like it's cooling them off. They're so overheated that they need to cool off.
Wow.
Maybe the lesson is don't do
meth.
meth.
Yes, that is.
There's our PSA for the day.
That's a That's a safe one.
I can get on board with that.
And the thing about those is when they're that jacked up on meth, they're super strong.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to tase them because their heart is already so stressed out. So it's a really difficult situation for us to deal with.
But is it true? I feel like many years ago that when tasers became more popular as a
Tool.
non-lethal means of dealing with some of this, that a taser could be more effective than like shooting a bullet at somebody high on meth, because they knew of. I feel like the person who said that said there are incidents of like people shooting real bullets and the person's still coming at them. Or is that a myth? Maybe
No,
somebody was fibbing.
Actually, the myth is that, I mean, like you see the TV or the movie and somebody gets shot once and that's it. They're done. Like
Yeah.
that
Or they
is-
get tased and they go unconscious. That one's funny
yeah,
too.
they get tased and all of a sudden they're on. Like that's not how a taser works. It doesn't knock you unconscious. What the taser does is that there's two probes and it goes into you, and the electricity goes through a probe and your body completes the circuit. So
Ooh.
and the electricity cycles on and off really, really quick. So it locks you up. It locks up your muscles. It works on the muscles. So actually the more muscle somebody has, the better it'll work.
Oh.
But the other thing about a taser is
I'm going to be okay if I get tased. My muscles have been gone for a while now.
but I mean, that's why there's a lot of things about police shootings that people don't understand.
Yeah.
Like there's times where police will shoot someone like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And
people will think isn't once enough. and
right,
it's-
why did you have to shoot him that many times? Well, we don't shoot to kill. We shoot to stop the threat.
Mm-hmm.
And if the threat is still coming at you, or if there's still a threat to somebody else, you have to keep shooting until it does the job and they're not a threat anymore. It's not trying to kill somebody. Like obviously there's a good chance if you shoot somebody you're going to kill them, but we're shooting to end the threat.
Yeah.
And so that's one misconception that, well, you should just have to shoot them once and that's it. Like, no.
Well,
there's-
especially if they're on something or, depending on what's going on in their body. Yeah, they're not just going to go down necessarily right away.
I mean, I got shot in the head and I was
Kind of functioning.
yeah. As much as I am normally functioning anyway, right? Is that what you're thinking? I saw that look on your face.
No comment.
Beat you to it.
On that note, do you have one more you want to share? And then we'll do a quick break and come back.
Yes. We get into a lot of vehicle pursuits where we're chasing a car and the car is running from us. We also get into a lot, like what happens more often is foot pursuits. We're in a lot of
Okay.
deals where someone is running from us and we're chasing them. And it's a dangerous situation. Like let's say we're chasing somebody around a neighborhood and they go around a corner of a house. We don't know if they're still running or if they're waiting on the other side.
Yeah.
So when we come around the corner, we're going to get clobbered. So it's a dangerous thing for us to do. So the first one was really more, this is the funny one. Actually, they're both kind of funny. So there was a spot behind the old Sam's Club. So between the old Sam's Club and railroad tracks. And it was a place where people would kind of gather
Okay.
and drink and do drugs and other stuff. So it was a spot that we would hit routinely to make sure that there wasn't people there doing things they shouldn't be and then kicking them off the property. So one day I went there and I was by myself and there's 3 people sitting there. And it was one person that I was very familiar with and then like this younger couple. And they were probably in their 20s, like 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at them like, what are you doing here? Like,
Yeah.
they kind of look like hippies who just like hitched a ride from Colorado and they're just
Like
kind
we're
of
just here to meet new
right.
people.
They're just roaming the earth, doing their thing in their Subaru.
Don't send us hate mail, hippies from Colorado, please.
They couldn't figure out how to send mail.
I'll give you my husband's email address. It'll be in the show notes.
So I run all their names and they had some alcohol, whatever, but it wasn't something where I was going to take anyone to jail. So the female, she comes back and she has a warrant for her arrest for like a theft.
Oh. Now it's getting more interesting.
State?
Yeah, it was local one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, local. So, and then like, you'll hear like when someone's in a critical incident or in a shooting that like time slows down.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't one of those, but time slowed down. So she gets up and turns around and starts to run. And there was like a big broken tree like right behind her.
Uh-oh.
So she gets up and she turns and she starts to run, and it's like a cartoon. She just hits the tree and falls over and goes head first, and legs go over the tree.
Was she going pretty fast? So she
No.
kind of oh no.
She was not,
No.
not going fast. And
So it's really in slow
Okay,
motion.
so
It was.
time really stopped. I got it.
and I hadn't even moved yet. In fact,
Okay, but at this point she's aware that you know she
oh yeah,
has a
that's why
warrant.
she's running. She doesn't want to go to
Okay.
jail. I'm like,
Okay.
well, you got to get a minor warrant. We're going to go take care of this. So boom, she's up. She's trying to run. So she does her somersault thing over the tree.
Gymnastics.
And I haven't even moved yet.
She did
This was-
not stick the landing, I'm
No,
getting.
this was how
Okay.
worried about this situation I was. And I kind of looked over at the boyfriend who was sitting to my left. She's to my right. I look over to the boyfriend, and he just gives me this look like, shit, I don't know, dude. And I look back over, and now she's up again, and she's running down the path. So she's running towards the railroad tracks. So when we're in a foot pursuit, we'll call out that we're in a foot pursuit, and then the channel that we're on, dispatch will call what's called 1033, which means now we're the only call that's on this channel is my call,
Okay.
because we don't want, like, I'm going to be on the radio giving updates on where I am on this foot pursuit, and we don't want other people like clogging up the radio. So they go to a different channel. Anyone who's going to come help is going to be on my channel, whatever. So there's all this protocol, and so she's running, and I'm kind of like, really, is this happening? That's what I'm thinking. So I'm kind of jogging after her, and she's just coming to the edge of like where the woods was, and she falls again. And she gets up.
Hey,
and
she's committed.
She gets up to the railroad tracks, and she falls again.
Oh, geez.
So
Wow.
this isn't the most professional thing I've ever done, but I'm on the radio giving updates like, I'm in a foot pursuit, and most of the time when someone's in a foot pursuit, like
You hear him.
they're like frantic,
Yeah.
or they're like your adrenaline like is up here, and like even our most seasoned cops sometimes scream like a little girl when they're in some kind of a situation like that, like their radio traffic.
You going
is-
to call anybody out? No, I'm kidding.
No, nope, not going to do it. So I think I'm actually like chuckling while I'm on, like, all right, I'm in a foot pursuit. We're headed towards Thompson Park is the park. And I think I was like, all right, never mind. She fell. And I think I'm literally laughing as I'm on the radio. And then she's up again, like, no, we're going again. And then she falls on the tracks,
Oh, she fell.
and she gets up, and then it goes down the hill, it gets to the bottom of the hill at the bottom of the slope of the railroad tracks, goes down again. So
I've lost count now. It
she
might
fell
be
like
more than all of
4 times at least.
Okay.
I
she
would pay
wasn't-
money to hear that radio traffic, though.
Are those saved forever?
There's like Keystone Cop music going while this is going on. So she falls like the 4th, 5th time, whatever it was, and I'm still laughing. So now I'm getting a little tired of it. It's getting a little old at this point. So I just like, and she was like this tiny thing, like really skinny. So I just kind of put my hand on her back and I said, "Are you done?" And she like starts to struggle a little bit. She's trying to get back up, and then that lasted about 2 seconds. She's like, "Yeah, I'm done." I'm like, "All right, put your hands behind your back." So then it was all cooperation from then on out. But that was,
She just had to get it out of her system. It's like a dog having a zoomie.
even the boyfriend was like,
Really?
"What are you doing? You're not making a good choice right now." And it was like, so the like running from the police is a class 1 misdemeanor. Her warrant was for like a class 2 misdemeanor. So she Like
Uh-oh.
now she has
upped her.
now
Up the ante.
if I even charged her, honestly, I don't remember. Like I might have not even some. You know, we have discretion on these things on if we want to charge or not. And I don't honestly remember if I did, but this might have been one where like, well,
You
thanks.
just kind of felt sorry for
Yeah,
her.
right. Like, all right, I'm just go take care of your warrant.
Like, this is just so pathetic. I just can't even add to it.
Yeah. So that's my first foot pursuit story. So the second one is also kind of funny. There's a similar theme here. Either I'm really fast, or everyone I'm chasing is really really slow. Probably the second one.
Well,
Probably the
I
latter.
mean, you test this every year, right? You should know how fast you are.
Well, there's a difference between running a mile and a half and chasing someone in a
okay.
sprint. That's not the same.
Okay.
So this other one was, it was a neighborhood. Somebody called because this guy was like trying to get into their house, and then he left that house and was trying to get into another house. So this was in the daytime, so it didn't really seem like this is a guy trying to break into houses. I think this guy just doesn't know where he is.
Oh, shoot.
It happens more than you think, too.
Yeah.
Someone wakes up and there's a stranger on their couch. They think they're in the where they're supposed to be, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
No.
So I'm
Keep your doors locked.
right. So I'm up there and I'm in this neighborhood and I'm driving around and I'm kind of figuring by the time I get up there, this guy's going to be gone. Well, no. So I see him and he's a good 50 yards ahead of me. And he's
Okay.
like, the description was perfect. Like, I'm like, well, this is the guy. So he goes around the backside of the house, of a different house, into like a field type area. And I'm like, all right, all we need is for this guy to just not be in this neighborhood. So maybe he'll just disappear. So I'm not running like lights and sirens. So I drive as far as I can go, get out of my car. I'm kind of jogging up to the edge of the house.
Is it daytime or nighttime?
Daytime.
Daytime. Okay.
So I'm thinking I'm going to peek around the corner of this house and he's going to be like long gone. Like, nope. He's still only like 25, 30 yards ahead of me. I'm like,
Oh, you are really fast.
and he's still running. Like, I don't know if he,
Oh.
I don't know if it was like, it's like quicksand or it's like another cartoon where his legs are moving and he's just not moving, or
There's a conveyor belt underneath
he's
him.
like, you know, when you're in a dream and you're trying to run, you can't run. Like, that's
Yes,
what it seemed like.
That
I'm
ticks
like,
me off.
shit, now I got to chase this guy.
Oh, shoot.
So I run after him. It doesn't take me long to catch up because he's that slow. And
Were you just out on like a Sunday jog? Like,
That's kind of a
"Excuse
cup
me,
half
sir.
empty attitude.
Excuse me, sir. I'm going to need you to stop running
Yeah.
now.
so
Instead of pulling up in the car. Yeah.
So I catch up to him, and I don't remember. I think I just yelled at him to get on the ground, and he was pretty tired at that point.
He was giving it his all.
So he just lays down on the ground. So I get him handcuffed, and he's laying there, and so I get his ID, and he's from Oklahoma. So I run his name. He's got nothing. He's got no warrants. He's not on probation or parole, like nothing. I'm like, dude, why the hell are you running? He's like, he's still out of breath. He's like, I'm from Oklahoma. And that's just what we do. I like, so I had no
It's like a school subject or something.
crime. Like,
Probably.
he was, I add like,
But
what are you
was
doing?
he conscious that he was trying to get into these homes?
Yeah, I'm like, he's like, basically he had some friend or relative who he thought lived in that neighborhood, and
Just gonna try him.
I guess he's just going to keep trying houses till he found, like, not very bright, so slow and not just a foot, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so, again, I think I just, like, I could have charged him with running away from me. I'm like, so I basically took the handcuffs off, and I'm like, go back to Oklahoma. Bye.
Well, and get a phone number from your person you're trying to get in touch with instead of knocking on,
Who knows?
going door to door and hoping for the best.
This might have been like where most people had cell phones, but
No.
Those were the days. I left
You haven't
my
been a cop that long.
yeah. I remember being a holdout on the texts. Like I wasn't gonna. Everybody's, oh, it's so cool. I can text people, and I'm just like, not gonna do it. I'm gonna stay old school. Not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. And then when he was in the hospital, after the shooting, everybody's just, and I had a flip phone
Yeah.
at the time, and they're texting me wanting to know what's going on. So because I wasn't sleeping either, I'm like, having to do the click, 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 trying to get to the right
Yep.
letter and text messages back at 3:30 in the morning.
Those were the good old days.
Oh Lord, that made you work for it. Now I can just talk into it, and it's like it still butchers it. You have to go definitely review it, but it still like saves a lot of time.
I mean, back to the shooting deal. That was a flip phone that I
Yeah,
called her on.
Yeah.
I could text with it, but it wasn't.
yeah. It was going to cost us a lot of money because we didn't have that plan, but it was kind of cool at the time. The phone company, I called them after all of that, and they waived all those charges because it was a
Okay.
critical incident. They just I'm like, here's the situation, and because it was going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Well,
and
this will age me too.
poor cop family.
I used to, when I first had a cell phone and I was first working, I would have to write down like how many minutes I talked so that I didn't go over my minutes.
Yes.
And I always talked to my mom on the phone at night, and I would like keep track of how many minutes so I knew how many I had left at the end of the month. It was, those were the days.
Those were the days.
I loved telling the kids at the school that we didn't have internet when I was in college. 'Cause we didn't.
No?
It was just starting to be a thing. I got my first email address when I was a senior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to use it.
Yeah, I think I was a sophomore in college when I got
Good
my first email
times.
address.
Simpler days.
All HTML. Yeah, it was like weird.
Classic. I don't care who you are, people falling is funny. I had an old co-anchor, and like to this day, if I catch a really good video of somebody falling, I'll still send it to him because he's like, I love seeing people fall. I was like, I know you do. I know you do.
Does his name rhyme with Dustin Panera? Okay.
Indeed it does. Let's take a break. We'll be right back and wrap things up on the Escape Pod. Hello, escape artists out there. Quick public service announcement. You hear us talk on the Escape Pod about the One Heart campus. To learn more about this place for hope and healing where lives are changed for the better, listen to the prologue episode at escapepod.live or wherever you get your podcasts, or visit oneheartrc.org. Okay, we are back in the Escape Pod. I'm Julie here with Charity and our special guest, Officer Tim. Are you glad you came?
I am.
There you go. Will you come back? I know there are more stories than this.
I am running out, but I mean, I'm sure I could think of more. All I need to do is go sit down with some coworkers and start talking, and then
Yeah.
the stories come
The
out.
stories keep coming. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I know I heard some in the hospital room, but those would not.
Oh, that just reminded me of one.
Okay.
That's probably not one I can share.
No.
There's probably way more you can't share than what you can. But we appreciate you coming. We'll see you again. Well, she'll see you later, but I will see you next time you come back to the Escape Pod. Charity, are you escaping to someplace you actually want to be instead of always escaping from the bad stuff?
Well, this might be a bad sign, but it might be a good thing. I don't know. I'll let you decide.
Okay.
So this morning I went in for an acupuncture session,
Okay.
and I haven't had it done in ages.
Okay.
So it's 30 needles all over my body. And see this little spot right here? It's called a miracle point.
Okay.
Okay. And that's supposed to, like, if I heard her right, like just alleviate a bunch of stress. And I'm
Oh.
like, bring it on.
Yeah.
So I'm face down on the massage table, and then there's like a little table beneath where your headrest is. So my hands are there.
Mhm.
And so I'm all needled up. And we were talking, and I started, because I talk with my hands. So, but I knew I couldn't move my hands, but I'm moving my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I'm like, something hurt. And it was that spot. It just hurt. And so because I moved my
Oh.
tendon or whatever, it got jacked up in there. And so after a couple minutes, she's like, is that still hurting? I said, yeah. So she comes over and she tries to pull it out and doesn't want to come out. It's stuck. I'm like, oh.
That's not a good sign.
And so she sells me on this miracle point. I'm like, good, maybe I'm actually going to finally have a good day, because I've had a run of 15 really bad days probably. And so she finally gets it out, and I think it was bleeding too. And then I'm sitting there the whole time, like, she's like, you got to try to relax. And I'm like, I'm trying. And I just could not relax. And so I'm like, and then she goes, oh, that's your right arm, which means it's your analytical part of your brain, so left brain. And I'm like, crap, because what have I been doing lately, right? Trying to problem solve some pretty big issues. And so I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm never going to solve it? Or does that mean all the cortisol has turned my meridians into concrete?
Yeah.
Or what? So I'm trying to escape stress, and I don't know, short of career change, maybe.
Stop it.
That's not where I would have guessed a miracle point would be.
Oh, God.
Tim, where are you escaping to?
Well, she already said we're going to Deadwood this weekend.
Good times.
Yeah.
Do you gamble?
No.
Not really.
We'll go stay up there and walk downtown and bring the bikes up and go bike to Mickelson and lots of good places to eat. It's an short distance away to just kind of get out of town.
We do like Jacob's Brewery because they have the bakery side.
Yes.
They do wonderful gluten-free things.
Okay.
So
I went there for the first time. I'm not even kidding. A month and a half ago.
it's so good. Plus, I love the architecture. I just love the big giant door and all the metal work and everything.
I have wanted to go for ages. And
They are not a sponsor. We are not, but
not at all.
You can, Mr. Jacob.
All we had was like chips and dip and beer. But it is a super cool building. And I had wanted to go forever and just never, the one time we made a plan to go, they weren't open that day.
Aw.
They had odd hours. I think it was the middle of
great
winter,
food,
which
so
sometimes.
if you ever do for like a
Yeah.
really, really good food.
Yeah. But it's a great location and very cool old historic architecture in there. So awesome. I think I am escaping to a free day on Saturday without much going on. And if you listen to this podcast, you know how much I appreciate those days. So I think that's going to do it, right? Are we closing the
I
hatch?
think so, yeah. Just
tell people where they can find us.
You can find us on EscapePod.live. You can reach out at justbecause at EscapePod.live. Or if you want to share a story with us about your own escape journey, you can send that into escapeartist at EscapePod.live.
We are closing the hatch on this edition of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional.
So stay resilient.
As she's having an issue with her computer.
And don't throw your laptop out the window.
And keep laughing.
Bye, everybody.